Okay. Hi, this is Anne, again, making a third video. Probably gonna only do one more. So 3 of 4 videos about the same topic, which is sexual harassment, misconduct, assault, rape, and the reason I'm doing this is because of all the attention in the media and in the news lately. Well, the most recent event with Brett Kavanaugh, but also just this has been building up over time with like the Me Too movement and all these allegations and that have come to light more and more and more frequently over the last several years, and it just seems to be gaining more and more momentum and attention. And so as a person who's been sexually assaulted and harassed and all kinds of good stuff, of course I have a lot to say about it. Also, as a mental health counselor, it's very important to me. It's important to me professionally and personally. So, continuing on from video number 2, I was giving some examples of behaviors and attitudes that constitute sexual, they occur somewhere on the spectrum of sexual misconduct, whether it's just harassment or all the way to rape. And in naming the behaviors and the attitudes, hopefully they can be recognized more easily and then changed. So with this video, I thought of this Netflix show called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. It's co-created by Tina Fey. I love Tina Fey. And it's on Netflix, and it features these 4 women who were abducted and held hostage in this religious cult by a reverend played by John Hamm. And from the last video, I like John Hamm. Yes, I do. So anyways, in this scene, in this show, these 4 women, they're called the mole women because they were kept underground for like 15 years or something. And so they're like 15 years behind the time. And so they're on television and sitting in an interview with Matt Lauer. And so he, of course, asks each one of them, how did you end up in this cult? And one of the mole women explains that she was a waitress, and she had waited on Reverend Richard, John Hamm, a bunch of times at this place called York's Steakhouse. And one night he invited her to go out to his car to see some baby rabbits. And even though her intuition said, that's kind of creepy, she went ahead and did it anyways because she didn't want to be rude. She didn't want to be rude, and so she ignored her intuition and said, okay, fine, I'll go out into the parking lot with you. And Lauer responds to her, I'm always amazed at what women will do because they're afraid of being rude. And this resonates with me because I have been socialized this way. And I've had to work on assertiveness and boundaries and not being worried about whether I offend somebody or I come across as rude. So this scene is really funny, but it's devastating at the same time because it just makes me sad that women are socialized to be agreeable and cordial and submissive and to be so concerned about others' feelings and well-being at the expense of their own. And this gets us into a lot of trouble and unsafe and compromising situations, which then, of course, we're blamed for, or at least partially blamed. And so I wanted to give like 3 examples of this type of thing where women find themselves in these situations, and then of course there's victim blaming and shaming after the fact. The first one I've been told personally, and I've heard it said of women in general, is that we're too nice. We're too nice. And then, of course, that can be easily perceived as being flirtatious, or by showing interest, that means you're romantically interested, perhaps. And so it's like it opens, like if you give an inch, then they take a mile type of thing. So my response to that is always, I'm just being friendly and respectful and engaging and social. In no way did I intend for that to be taken or assumed to mean that I'm flirting. If I'm flirting, you'll know it. There won't be any, is she or isn't she, or is she doing it subtly? No, and I don't like being told it's you being too whatever. Well, maybe it's you being too whatever. So I've had to learn to be not that nice. Not to be not nice at all, but to not be nice in a way that's authentic for me, because so many times that's been misconstrued as flirtation or romantic interest, when in fact that's not what I was feeling at all. Number 2, women should not be wearing provocative or sexy outfits or clothing and makeup, because what that means is you want the attention. You want the attention, and you want to be stared at, and you want to be ogled, and you want to be hit on, and you want to have sex. And like Dave Chappelle talks about this in one of his stand-up shows, and it's pretty funny. I mean, like, it's giving kind of confusing mixed messages, right? Well, okay, so yes, women want flirtatious attention. Yes, we do. It's true. We want to be desired, and we want to be considered attractive and beautiful and sexy and all that. We want to be able to own our beauty and our sexuality with confidence. And we want to be able to go into public and be express our personalities and our individual styles, and we want to look good, and we do want to have sex. Absolutely. Things cross over into the misogyny and sexual assault zone when men equate the overt sexuality with promiscuity and implied consent. That consent is simply given or implied by dressing sexy or provocatively. And that is where the problem lies. Consent is given when it's given. It's not implied, it's explicit. And when somebody says stop, or I don't like this, or no thank you, or whatever, there's your answer. And it's not, and then to be turned around and called like a tease or whatever, you know. Consent, people aren't entitled to sex or consent. And you know what else that made me think of is that I've been harassed and assaulted when I was dressed professionally and very low key and wearing long skirts and long sleeves and, you know, a high collar. And so you can't blame sexism and sexual assault and harassment and rape. You can't put all the blame on how women dress, because it happens either way. So, number 3. Okay, so women bring on the unwanted attention and behaviors by not using common sense or safety precautions. So for example, drinking or partying too much and getting too silly or loosey-goosey, uninhibited, giggly, flirty, dancing seductively in public, walking alone, especially at night when you're drunk, you know, and doing unsafe things. And I agree that it is important to take safety precautions for everyone, men, women, everyone. It's important to be aware of your surroundings and to be smart and to act accordingly. But what about when you do that, you do behave as intelligently as you can and stuff like this, and you're sexually assaulted? What about then? So I thought of a handful of examples of when you're at risk, higher risk than normal. When you're young and you're in middle school, high school, college, and you're still naive, typically, and not fully aware of the potential dangers that you're in, or that you could be in, that's perpetrated, and it can be perpetrated by peers, acquaintances, friends, classmates, not just strangers. Or so I think there are definitely situations where there's just an unawareness and an innocence and a naivety, which puts you inherently at risk. Another example, what if you're new to a city and you get lost trying to navigate your way somewhere, home, wherever, and you find yourself in a really sketchy neighborhood, or you're in a pretty decent neighborhood, but then you just turn down the wrong street, which is really easy to do in big cities. And then what? And then you got somebody following you or catcalling you, or yeah. So what do you do then? Like, is it your fault if you get assaulted because you don't know your way around neighborhoods or something? And that's happened to me before. Like, I'm navigating the best I can, and I made a mistake. Definitely have made mistakes doing that. What if somebody in authority and power and has more wisdom and knowledge than you do takes advantage of you? Like, there's a power differential. Like, you have, you know, boss and then subordinate in like an employee-employer situation, or like you're an intern and an employee takes advantage of that, or just any kind of power differential that's exploited or used to seduce or whatever. I guess in my mind, the predators and opportunists are watching for easy, unsuspecting prey. They're watching for low-hanging fruit. They're looking for opportunities to take advantage of. People who do stuff like this, who commit sexual assault or harassment, misconduct, all that stuff, they don't have regard for the people who they do stuff like that to. And they take advantage of their vulnerability. And it's predatory, it's opportunistic, and I just find it so sad that men and even women, they're so cavalier about women's bodies and emotions and sexual intimacy. You know, like it's just no big deal. But it is. I mean, sex is a powerful thing. So, consent. People on the same page, there's no manipulation or whatever. Consent. Informed consent. And don't shift blame to the victims. Well, you should have, and you ought to have, and you did this and whatever. Did I hold a gun to that person's head and make them rape me? No, I didn't. All right, so in my last video, I just want to talk about how not to be a victim, how not to become a victim. And if you have been victimized, what can you do to recover and heal and to protect and empower yourself going forward? Talked enough about all these examples of behaviors and attitudes and all this. What can the survivors and victims do? I think that's just as important. Thanks.